what do I think in general? It's like, obviously I'm bullish on the asset class. It seems to me that we've got remarkable consensus that Bitcoin is digital property. We got remarkable consensus that Bitcoin is the one universally accepted commodity. We've also got a consensus growing that everything else is a security, by the way, safe, which is, if you roll the clock back 12 months, I think it wasn't clear, but I think right now, out of 6,500 cryptos, I think that you might have a debate over 12 of them being property, and it looks like everything else is a security. And if you're not a proof of work coin, if you're a proof of work coin that's a fork of Bitcoin or something like that, maybe there's a debate about whether it can be property. Half of them aren't, half of them are. But everything that's got an ICO, everything on proof of stake, everything related to DeFi, all of the functional coins, all the staking tokens, it's pretty clear the view of the regulators is if there's staking involved, it's a security. If there's DeFi involved, it's probably a security, right? If there's a central organization, if there's a venture capitalist involved, it's a security. If there's a central development head, it's a security, right? Any of those things are securities. And I think a lot of people don't want to embrace that reality, but that is kind of the reality. And so we're in this very interesting tension where what should theoretically happen is most of the altcoins should disappear, or they should, probably they should disappear. A few should become publicly listed, privately listed security tokens with disclosures and different rails. A lot of the entrepreneurs should exit, right? They get squeezed out of the market. A few entrepreneurs can come public, like cross the chasm. Can you get an FDIC license in order to issue a stable coin, right? That kind of stuff. Can you actually get the appropriate license? Can you hire the right lawyers in order to get through that chasm? And some do, but 98% don't. And what I see coming from the president's working group and all the regulatory, if you read the stablecoin memo, if you read the denial of the spot ETF, if you read the Crenshaw memo, which was issued by a commissioner of the SEC, Caroline Crenshaw, and if you parse all the testimony of the regulators in congressional hearings and public speeches, the conclusion you come to is there are two things that are acknowledged that the world wants. One thing the world wants is it wants digital dollars, stablecoin digital dollars, and it wants 10 trillion of it, 20 trillion of it. Like, we've got $160 billion stablecoin market, with Tether and Circle leading. But what the world really wants is it wants 10, 20, 30, 50 trillion of it. I mean, they want to replace their lira and their pesos and their, every currency in the world, they want to flip from local currency to dollars, and they want to go from analog dollars to digital dollars, right? I don't trust the peso or the lira, so I want the dollar, but I don't trust the bank, so I want it out of the bank, right? So if I were to go and interview 1,000 people on the street in Africa or South America or Asia, and I said, would you rather convert your local currency to the US dollar? And would you rather have your dollars in your hand versus in your bank? I think that you'd have like 90, 95%, 98% consensus that everyone would rather have custody of their own currency, and they'd rather have the strongest currency in the world. And the US dollar is the strongest currency in the world for two reasons. One, because you can trade cross borders, right? You can trade between Libya and Lebanon and Turkey and Paris and the US with the dollar. And you can't do it with the CNY or the euro or the local currency. So it's the worldwide global medium of exchange. And the second reason they want it is because it's losing value the slowest I mean, maybe there's like two or three, I don't know, maybe the Swiss, franc or something. There might be two or three currencies that look a little bit stronger, but it looks like you've basically got currencies pegged to the dollar.
Yep.
And then you've got currencies getting weaker than the dollar at a gradual rate. And you've got currencies getting, by the way, you've got some getting weaker to the dollar at a gradual rate that's shielded by capital controls. Like, I think the CNY is getting weaker than the dollar, but there's capital controls, so it's not so obvious. It's pegged, but with capital controls. And we know, like, the Argentine peso is pegged with capital controls, and it's still getting weaker at a rapid rate, right? The 100 pesos to the dollar is the official rate. 200 pesos to the dollar is the unofficial rate. And it was 20 pesos to the dollar 36 months ago. So I think what you see is the dollar is setting the standard. Everybody pegged to the dollar that's got no capital control. They're just weakening at the same rate. The ones with weak capital controls are weakening 10% faster. And the ones and others are weakening 20, 30, 40, 50% faster, and they're literally collapsing. So that's the currency story. Everybody wants digital dollars and they don't trust their banks. And then the property story is, and this is not uniform, right? I think that smart people that are informed know they want to swap out their weak property for strong property, or their weak asset for strong asset. But there's a lot of debate there, right? So you know what I would say? I would say every property is weaker than Bitcoin. So sell your real estate, sell your equity, sell your bonds, sell your gold, sell your silver, sell your commodities, sell your collectibles, sell everything, buy Bitcoin. But generally, not everybody fully understands that. I don't know, we're 2, 3, 4, 5% into the education and safe. Everybody in the world understands that the dollar is better than their local currency. There is not a debate. 1.5 billion people in China, everybody in Brazil, everybody in Argentina, everybody in Africa. So
I'm sorry to tell you, but unfortunately, I know from Lebanon, there is significant debate about this. People have maintained the idea that their lira is going to be recovering against the dollar as the lira has gone from 1,500 to 25,000. There's still people delusional enough to say, oh, 25,000. Well, this is clearly undervalued now, and we're going to come back to 12,000.
Okay, I'll defer to you since you're on the ground there. I will retract my statement. I'll state it fine. Absent extraordinary patriotism, idealistic patriotism.
Brainwashing is another word for it.
Right? Let's just say even like 80%, right? The great majority of people, absent the patriots and the idealists, know that they'd like to swap out their weak currency for a strong currency. On the other hand, there's a lot of debate in the US or, in other markets about, do I want to hold the S&P index, or do I want to have a second investment property, or do I want to own some gold, or do I want to own commodity baskets? Now, let's come back to the whole point, though. I'm talking about regulators. If you parse very carefully Gary Gensler's public statements, no less than 5 or 6 occasions, he said there are two things that stick out. 2 things that are very important. Maybe three things. I'm going to reduce the last, everything that's been uttered by the most influential regulators in the world to 3 things. 1 thing, Satoshi's innovation is real, which is another way to say we have created truly decentralized digital property in cyberspace that is not owned and controlled by any company, any individual, or any government. We have common property, pari passu, gold or land or commodities. That's the first innovation, right?
The immaculate conception, as we like to call it here.
And it's another way of saying, if I understand securities law, and if I understand law, and if I understand finance, then I will acknowledge that you can create digital property, assuming that you have a fair, permissionless network without an ICO or a central party or an investment contract. So we know that Bitcoin has done it. It may theoretically be done again by somebody else, maybe a fork of Bitcoin, right? You could probably, your best argument would be a fair fork of Bitcoin now If it were to fork right now, then maybe the thing that was created could also be deemed as property. I'm not saying it would succeed, right? Like, might not, here's your best idea. What if the Chinese government forked Bitcoin and then made it illegal to use the first fork, but the second fork they kept in China, and then they didn't interfere with it any other way? And maybe if Elon Musk forked Bitcoin in Mars, and you had Mars coin, China coin, and Bitcoin, and all three of them started from the state of the network right now, and then they had some geographic political reason to be separated, and you could hold that China wall or that Mars wall up. And there's nobody in Mars, right? But if there was, right? If you could do that, then maybe you have another digital property, right? Maybe. And I think that's
the bar is set for altcoiners, basically. This is what you got to do.
That's a good way to say it. Satoshi set a high bar, but that's the bar, right? That's the Bitcoin standard is the Satoshi standard is a fair distribution without an ICO, without intent to profit on the efforts of others. That is just a community property, right? So that's the first thing to take away. The second utterance, to be able to trade 24/7, 365 at the speed of light with zero friction is useful in the world of commerce. That is to say, I think that Gensler recognizes, and I think any fair regulator or economist or politician recognizes that there's a benefit to be able to move stuff at the speed of light, friction-free, 24/7, 365. The digital transformation of the economy, or fintech, if you will. And for that to manifest itself effectively right now, you need a digital dollar, right? You need a digital currency. And I've said before, why? Because there's 100 million companies that have collectively invested trillions and trillions of dollars in accounting systems and installed those systems over 30 years so that they can trade with each other. And because of the inertia of the accounting systems, the systems inertia, the corporate inertia, and the existence of nation states, it means that it is either illegal or impractical for all the economic actors to not trade in currencies. So as long as the EU and the US dollar, the US exist, and as long as the US dollar and the euro are legal tender, and as long as companies like SAP and Oracle run the accounting for Disney and McDonald's and Pfizer and the US government and the payroll, et cetera, as long as that happens, then you're going to use dollars and euros. But what we recognize is that not being able to move them on the weekend with a computer is holding back the worldwide economy. Even today, just about every day, I pick up the phone, right? And then I have to approve wire transfers. Like, this is a 30-year-old way to move money around, 30 years. So we still have a situation where it's very challenging to move currencies as a medium of exchange. So the second thing that everybody wants is they want the digital currency, and they want a small amount of local currency, digital rupees and digital pesos and digital naira and digital. As long as there's a nation state that exists, you need a small amount of that. Hold it for a day, right? Digital bolivars. And then they want a larger amount, like a month to a year of digital dollars. And then after that, what you want is something to hold a lifetime, digital property, right? So I think that the first observation is digital properties and innovation. The second observation is we need digital currency, and people need to trust this stuff. And nobody trusts stable coins right now issued by entrepreneurs offshore, right? The never-ending Tether FUD, right? Never-ending, right? And Tether is an entrepreneurial company. I'm glad they exist, and they exist to meet a need. And if my choice was to have money in a bank in Afghanistan or hold Tether dollars on my phone, then I would prefer the latter than the former. It's pretty obvious why they exist. But if JP Morgan issues $1 trillion of stable coins, it'll be good for the industry. It'll be good for the world. At the point that you have Silvergate Bank, a publicly traded bank, they just raised $480 million last week, by the way, right? A publicly traded bank with an FDIC license that issues hundreds of billions and then trillions and then tens of trillions of dollars of US dollars. That's the bargain that it takes for the US government to trust the coin moving. That's the expectation they have. And it's not an unreasonable one, because there's no way that Facebook or Google or Apple or Amazon will ever move trillions of dollars of stable coin around from Tether. It won't happen, right? And there's no way that you will see Microsoft and Amazon and IBM and Pfizer do cross-border payment remittance unless it comes from, unless they have access to a stable coin from a Bank of America or Citigroup or whatever. So if you're looking for the big use cases for these things, you're going to want to have massive amount of stable coin for global remittance, for payments between 8 billion people, and for the 100 million companies that trade with each other. So that's the second observation. And the third observation that you get over and over again is most everything else is a security, right? If there's an ICO and it was issued in expectation of earning a profit, and if it's a small group of people, if we're depending on the efforts of others, it meets the definition of an investment contract security. So what we're waiting for, right, is clear guidance about if you're currently owning securities or you've issued one, what do you do next? If you're trading them, what do you do next? If you want to issue a stable coin, what do I have to do to get to a stable coin? And that creates a lot of regulatory uncertainty and overhang. If you're a crypto trader, if you're a DeFi exchange, if you're a security token, all of those. But where is there no overhang? If you want to own Bitcoin as digital property for 100 years and hold it as a store of value, it's crystal clear, right? It's not going to be banned. It's not even banned in China. I mean, per official guidance, the Chinese don't want you to trade OTC. It's a capital control issue. They have this issue with mining Bitcoin, which is silly, but I have yet to see a bright line edict in Chinese that says you cannot own digital property. They haven't said it. In fact, they've said the opposite. And everywhere else where there's regulatory action, it seems to me that it's all touching on stablecoin issuance, stablecoin transfer. It's touching on tax, it's touching on securities laws and leverage. And the frustration of the other token holders and the entrepreneurs is obvious and high, right? And I think that Bitcoin suffers due to the volatility that's induced by being conjoined by literally, there might be billions of dollars of Bitcoin that's actually linked as a trading pair as collateral to ETH. And every time it moves, everything is moving up and down, literally second by second, minute by minute. And, it's like, it's illegal to trade with 20 to X leverage on the NASDAQ. It's illegal, right? But in fact, what you have in the other crypto markets is 20X, 100X leverage, and you can cross collateralize that stuff. And, the regulators have yet to give clear guidance. I think they don't really want to crash the market, right? I mean, they could literally crash the market, but I think that's a 36-month thing, Safe. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah. I think it's very astute what you said, that the alts are trying to drag Bitcoin into this, and I think your average altcoiner is usually out there complaining about Bitcoin consuming so much energy, and Bitcoin is boiling the oceans, and Bitcoin's outdated and we don't need Bitcoin and we need to move on. And, just yesterday I saw some guy from one of the most centralized, crippled shitcoins, which I won't name explicitly, making a proposal for how to advance Bitcoin by moving off proof of work in order to reduce electricity consumption. So they're always, they're always so concerned about Bitcoin. They need to change Bitcoin, and they think Bitcoin is dead, and they want you to not invest in Bitcoin because they want you to join the gains until the regulators come about, in which point they start getting angry at Bitcoiners because, Bitcoiners aren't supporting us, and Bitcoiners are cheering on the SEC, and Bitcoiners are being statists. And it's pretty interesting. And I think that you also see that as well from a lot of the organized lobbying. I think a lot of the DC coin people, their modus operandi is to try and get, nobody lobbies for Bitcoin. That's the thing. Very few people, like if you get Bitcoin, you realize it doesn't really need you to lobby for it much. And you realize there's a very high opportunity cost for investing in lobbyists, and you'd rather just stack sats with it because Bitcoin is clear. It's very clear that it, as you said, Satoshi's innovation is real. The Immaculate Conception, it wasn't a security. It was obvious it wasn't a security. It was just a digital form of property that emerged organically on the internet. Nobody controls it. So there's no point behind wasting money on lobbying, but there is a lot of incentive for altcoiners to spend a lot of money on lobbying because it's very clear that their altcoins are securities. And so there's a lot of incentive to try and bundle in the altcoins with Bitcoin in order to try and pass it off as, and everybody wants their altcoin to be part of the small number of alts that are like Bitcoin. Ours is decentralized, ours and Bitcoin are decentralized, but all these other ones, let the SEC tear at them. I'm also wondering, what do you think in terms of, I think, in a sense, like the attack on Bitcoin, many Bitcoiners have been pretty paranoid about the idea that governments are going to attack. And it seems, even the China thing, as you said, they banned the mining, but they haven't banned ownership, and they haven't thrown anybody in jail because they own Bitcoin. They haven't criminalized it. It's not like owning cocaine. You're not getting searched and arrested for it. But it seems to me like, fiat world is fighting back in a sense by perhaps, people who are from the fiat world, they just, I'm not saying this is kind of a conscious conspiracy. It's just intellectually, they think of it as, the fiat coins as the altcoins because they're centralized. They allow us to do more tricks. They allow us to have more leverage. They allow us to have more credit, more financing. It looks to me like that is kind of the attack on Bitcoin. Like people who are not excited about the prospect of hard money and escaping fiat are thinking of, boosting all the non-Bitcoin coins. Like you think of somebody like Elon Musk coming in and choosing to pump Dogecoin. I think that's not entirely unrelated to the fact that, a lot of people coming from traditional finance are in the fiat mindset of money needs to be controlled by a group of people.
Well, I think that if the Bitcoin community just embraced the idea that Bitcoin is digital property and it's going to coexist with digital currencies issued by the United States or Europe or China, then 99% of all of the resistance and friction just disappears completely. And then what you realize is your debate is with gold, and your debate is with real estate, and your debate is over whether you should buy the S&P index, and it just becomes an investment decision. And then everybody that doesn't want to own Bitcoin because they want to own Apple stock just looks like they like Apple stock, right? Like if you want to invest in a VC venture, if you want to invest in a hotel, if you want to invest in a stock, if you want to invest in a collection of Picassos, these are all just different investment decisions that you made in lieu of buying Bitcoin. If you characterize it like that, then it becomes a lot less controversial, a lot less heated. And just step back and let the battle of the currencies take place between the currencies. I mean, the real battle right now is between the dollar and the peso and the naira and the RMB and the, et cetera, all the currencies. And there's no reason, if Bitcoin doubled every year for the next decade, it still wouldn't be but a small fraction of the money in the world. Right? So for the next decade, we could simply be good citizens, watch digital property grow from being 1 out of 500 trillion dollars, right? We're 1/500th of the property in the world or something like that. Why not just become 20% of the property in the world, become 200 trillion, if we're 200 trillion and there's 1,000 trillion, right, we'll be 20%. So at the same time, like if I'm gold, it's like the gold people, they want us to agree that we're both sound money and the enemy is the Fed. Okay, well, like, let's think about that for a second. I'm going to basically give the gold bugs 90% of the money. They're going to be worth 10 trillion. I'm worth 1 trillion. And we're both going to collectively agree that we want to topple 100 million businesses, all the accounting systems in every nation state in the world together. Like, why would I even bother, right? Why not simply just destroy gold? Why not just take the 10 trillion of gold and go from 1 trillion to 10 trillion? And how about, try walking into the boardroom of Disney Corp or Coca-Cola and telling them that we've decided that we stand for toppling nation states and the currency, and what we want them to do is buy Bitcoin. Like, I've said this before, you literally could line up everybody in every corporation in the world, hold a gun to their head and say, you have to stop taking dollars and switch your accounting systems. And you have to shoot them all. Because even if they wanted to, they couldn't, right? Nobody can change the fact that the world runs on dollars and the accounting systems are wired for currency. So we're picking a Pyrrhic battle. Like we're going to war over nothing. Because if you just understand Bitcoin as property and you accept the fact that, okay, well, what's the negative? The negative is if I transfer it and I sell it, I have to pay tax on it. That's the negative. What's the positive? You're not supposed to sell it. Like the positive, like the worst thing you could possibly do, in my opinion, is encourage people to give up their Bitcoin. So it's not a problem that you have to pay a tax if you just never pay it. The current tax code implies that you should buy it and hold it forever. And the current tax code of currency implies you should get rid of it as soon as you can, because there's no cost to get rid of it. So if we simply looked at the world like that, then we would stop wasting so much energy, right? If you've looked at every single banker, every time they say, well, is Bitcoin, is it a currency? Well, I mean, their answer is no, it's not a currency. Jerome Powell can't admit it's a currency. Christina Lagarde saying it's not a currency. And then the Bitcoin community oftentimes recoils in horror, like, yes, we are. Yes, we are. Why do you want to be? Like, why can't you actually be property worth $10 million a coin and not be a currency? If I told you, you could basically go from 0 to $10 million a coin and everybody will help you along the way. Every company, every government will help you along the way to become worth $10 million a coin. Or you can fight with everybody, right? The entire way. And if you succeed, you'll have toppled every government and every political group and every company and destroyed the entire 20th century economy, but you'll have your currency. Like what's left, right? Like if I rip every single company to zero and I destroy every country and every political system, you'll have your currency. But what are you going to buy with it when every company is non-existent and every government doesn't exist, right? You can't even buy bullets to defend yourself in the post-apocalyptic anarchy that follows, because bullets get manufactured by companies that use accounting systems that run on dollars, right? So I guess my point really is, it's not a battle to fight. Like ultimately, there's a view. The view is, well, you know, the politicians have too much power and they use the currency, right, to abuse that power. Yeah, right. And the solution is you basically demonetize everything in the world that's in the physical realm, and you demonetize all the currency derivatives, and you just do it gradually in such a way that every company and every government that's smart enough to buy into it benefits from it. And then one day you wake up and instead of 60% or 70% of the wealth in the world being a currency derivative, it's 10%. And, you know, when 10% of the wealth in the world is a currency derivative and the rest is like digital property, then inflation won't be so much a problem anymore. Right? Very shortly, right? Inflation's not going to be like people in Venezuela don't have to worry about the government forcing them to hold the bolivar and inflating it, because the bolivar has already lost so much of its energy that at this point, when the government can no longer print the money and inflate it, right, what you really have to worry about is the government just seizing your property at the barrel of a gun, right? They're just going to expropriate it, right? Any government that prints too much currency eventually loses their currency privileges, their currency collapses. And so what you've got is this rippling succession of currency collapses. And eventually what happens is you get down to like 3 or 4 currencies, and every single year the currency is 10% less of the economy than it was before. And at some point, you know, at some point we'll be down to the CNY and the USD, maybe there's like 4 currencies left. And instead of how much money is denominated in USD right now, you've got all the USD, you've got every other currency pegged to the USD, you've got $100 trillion of sovereign bonds or whatever. Then you've got $50 trillion worth of currency derivatives that are equities. Then you've got all of the commercial real estate, which has got rents that are capped at CPI, so they're currency derivatives. So if I stacked everything up, what I have like $400 trillion worth of currency derivatives all pegged to the dollar, about. And if Bitcoin grows to be 100 trillion to 200 trillion, then you would have 100 trillion in currency derivatives pegged to the dollar. And now the ratios shift, right? And as the ratios shift, then inflation gets to be less of an issue because the currency collapses. When do politicians realize their currency, they can't inflate the currency? I think that in Turkey and in Argentina and in Venezuela, they're figuring it out right now, right?